Welcome to this week's edition of the Top 10 in Prophecy, brought to you by The Watch Post, your home for end times news and last days commentary. I'm your host, the Watchwoman at her post. Today is Saturday, May 16th, and this is episode 109. This week's stories illustrate how last days prophecies continue to converge across the world stage, and how the chaos that results is summoning an ominous cry for safety through oversight, governance, and ultimate control. So grab your Bible, hold on to your chair, and let's get the countdown rolling. We start this week with story number 10 about the Appalachian groan, an unexplained low-frequency hum that's rallying thousands in search of answers. Over the last 6 days, residents across the Blue Ridge and Allegheny Mountains have reported what witnesses describe as a persistent mechanical hum or low-frequency vibration that is felt in the chest as much as it is heard. The activity consistently peaks between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock a.m. A couple of possible explanations have been tossed around. Local officials point to the recent surge in data center construction in the Virginia corridor. Experts note that large-scale industrial cooling systems and fans can create low-frequency hums that travel for miles, especially in mountainous terrain where the geography acts as a natural amplifier. Coincidentally, a study published in Frontiers in Behavioral Neuroscience just a few days ago highlighted how infrasound, or vibrations below 20 hertz, can cause feelings of intense anxiety, hauntings, and even physical nausea. Residents in these mountain towns have reported these exact symptoms alongside the hum. On the other hand, the U.S. Geological Survey has noted minor seismic adjustments in the eastern U.S. recently. Unlike large quakes, these micro adjustments can manifest as a persistent rumbling or hum in the bedrock. Why it matters? We're framing this in the context of the Great Delusion. As the world becomes more technologically saturated with AI, 6G, massive data grids, etc., the very frequency of our environment is changing to facilitate a more controlled, connected existence, a hive mind, so to speak. Number 9. Frequent violent solar storms threaten our fragile technological dependencies. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration confirmed on Thursday a massive Earth-facing coronal hole that stretches from the sun's northern hemisphere all the way to the south, crossing the solar equator. This immense sunspot is currently spewing high-speed solar wind directly at our magnetic shield. If you're a regular Watch Post listener, you've heard us report on heightened solar events quite a few times in recent weeks. In fact, the topic has become so prevalent, it may seem inconsequential by now. But the truth is, these solar ejections pose a serious threat to the planet, more so now than any time in the past. Why now, you ask? Because modern civilization has become extremely dependent on fragile interconnected systems: satellites, wireless communications, GPS timing, aviation routing, logistics networks, digital banking, and power. We depend on this technological infrastructure every hour of every day. One extreme solar storm could disrupt everything, and it's happened in the past. 2 years ago this month, the first ever G5 extreme geomagnetic storm warning was issued. That storm disrupted GPS systems, degraded satellite performance, caused voltage irregularities in portions of the power grid, and even sent precision-guided farming tractors in the Midwest off course during planting season because satellite guidance systems became unreliable. A little over 4 years ago, a severe geomagnetic storm heated and expanded Earth's upper atmosphere, dramatically increasing drag on 40 newly launched Starlink satellites while they were still in very low orbit. Most of them re-entered the atmosphere and burned up. Why it matters? These signs in the sun were foretold of in Luke 21, but they're more than just signs, they're also a serious warning. Number 8. The birth pangs are now non-stop. Like solar storms, the increased frequency of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions may be getting so commonplace now that our senses are starting to numb at the news. We had 2 6+ magnitude earthquakes already this past week. Swarms are being reported in areas where swarms aren't common. A 4.7 magnitude quake that struck near Brawley, California this week triggered a significant cluster in the Imperial Valley, which concerned scientists because of its relationship to the San Andreas Fault. As for volcanoes, eruptions in Indonesia this week forced evacuations and sent massive ash plumes into the atmosphere, disrupting nearby communities and raising aviation concerns throughout the region. So just like solar storms, Earthquake and volcano activity has increased in frequency and intensity, and just like solar storms, these events make our fragile infrastructure even more vulnerable than ever before. Jesus told us these birth pangs would start increasing, and evidence can be found all over the planet. Every week brings news of another devastating flood, wildfire, earthquake, eruption, drought, or historic weather event somewhere in the world. Number 7. Davos 2026 declares the end of the old world order. While the World Economic Forum met earlier this year, new reports and deep dive analyses published this week are highlighting a terrifying consensus. The rules-based international order is officially dead. Leaders like Mark Carney and Ursula von der Leyen are now openly calling for strategic resilience, a euphemism for a world where power, not law, governs. Modern strategic resilience is a geopolitical pivot away from international law and toward a might makes right framework where global stability is replaced by the interests of a few powerful blocs. Leaders are openly trading the language of law for the language of power, admitting that universal rules no longer govern a world fractured by competing interests. This shift transforms global trade and diplomacy into weaponized interdependence, where sovereignty is no longer a guaranteed right, but a capability reserved only for those with the military and technological strength to seize it. For the observer, this fortress building among nations signals the removal of global restraints, creating the exact vacuum of chaos that prophetic tradition suggests will eventually be filled by a singular, deceptive global authority. Why it matters. The restraining forces of global diplomacy are dissolving. We are moving into the multipolar era, which is the perfect vacuum for a single global leader to eventually fill. Number 6. Dragon and Bear, Kings of the East, form Megascience Financial Alliance. The technological partnership between Moscow and Beijing is deepening. News stories this week highlighted how the two nations are pooling their genetic and nuclear research to build a military technological shield that the West won't be able to penetrate, setting the stage for the Kings of the East to move as a unified force. The centerpiece of their space alliance is a joint moon base, which has now moved into Phase 2, construction. The partners plan to establish space dominance with joint satellite constellations for navigation that work independently of the U.S. GPS system. This ensures their militaries can operate even if the West turns off the global positioning grid. In another joint effort, Russia and China are working together on a massive particle accelerator with research focused on next-generation nuclear propulsion for spacecraft and potentially new energy-directed weapons that could disable satellite networks. Other projects are in the works as well. Why it matters. The Kings of the East are aligning not just militarily, but scientifically and financially. This is the Beast Systems infrastructure being built outside of Western control. The partnership between these two Eastern giants brings to mind that prophetic verse in Revelation 9:16, which says, quote, "The number of the army of the horsemen were 200 million.
Hey there, it's Andy here at the Watchpost. Just reminding you to subscribe to the channel if you like this content. It's completely free, won't cost anything at all. Be sure to click on the bell if you want to be notified when we post new videos. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show.
Story number 5. The Middle East is quietly realigning. In one of the most important stories of the week, a major behind-the-scenes realignment in the Middle East has broken wide open. On Monday, May 11th, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Mike Waltz, confirmed that the United Arab Emirates has integrated and deployed the Israeli-made Iron Dome system to defend against ongoing Iranian drone and missile threats. Later this week, Saudi Arabia floated a European-backed non-aggression pact with Iran based on the 1975 Helsinki Accords. Why it matters? This behind-the-scenes fracturing in the Gulf, specifically the UAE aligning militarily with Israel while Saudi Arabia sits back and plays a cautious diplomatic game, is a spectacular textbook setup for the precise dynamics described in Ezekiel 38. Now, because the story is so important, I'm handing the mic over to Andy for a deeper breakdown.
Hi folks. So to understand the implications here, we first turn to scripture and then take a closer look at the exact players mentioned in the prophecy. Now, in Ezekiel 38, a massive northern and eastern coalition led by Gog, historically linked to Russia and Persia, modern-day Iran, launches a sudden attack on Israel. When you read the list of invaders, the nations of the Arabian Peninsula are conspicuously absent. Instead, Ezekiel 38:13 explicitly states, "Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish, with all the young lions thereof, shall say unto thee, Art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey?" In biblical geography, Sheba and Dedan are the ancient names for the Arabian Peninsula, specifically modern-day Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Oman, and Qatar. So, what are these nations doing in the prophecy? They're not fighting Israel. Instead, they're standing on the sidelines, issuing a weak diplomatic protest. Are you really here just to steal their wealth? So, the current real-world fissure we're seeing play out in the news this week perfectly explains why Sheba and Dedan sit out the war. By deploying the Israeli Iron Dome and integrating militarily with Israel, the UAE has essentially crossed the Rubicon. In an Ezekiel 38 scenario, the UAE is already deeply entangled with Western and Israeli defense networks. They are functionally part of the merchants of Tarshish and the Young Lions, the Western-aligned economic and military structure. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia's push for a non-aggression pact with Iran shows they want absolutely no part in a catastrophic war. They're trying to insulate themselves. When Iran and Russia eventually pull the trigger on Israel, Saudi Arabia will do exactly what Ezekiel predicted 2,600 years ago. They'll look at the invading force and issue a toothless diplomatic complaint, entirely unwilling to get their hands dirty or break their non-aggression treaties. For decades, biblical scholars have wondered how Islamic nations like Saudi Arabia and the UAE could ever sit by and watch an invasion of Israel without joining in the fray. Now we see the mechanism. The UAE is hooked into Israel's defense grid, and Saudi Arabia is hedging its bets with diplomatic treaties. The Gulf states are quietly stepping out of the line of fire, perfectly positioning themselves to be the idle bystanders of Sheba and Dedan.
On to story number 4. The International Monetary Fund issues dire warning about AI. This week, the IMF issued a warning regarding an advanced AI model called Claude Mythos, claiming that the platform could destabilize global markets. The IMF stated that Mythos can exploit vulnerabilities in every major operating system and web browser, drastically cutting the costs for hackers to trigger systemic contagion in the financial sector. This led the IMF to call for international coordination and oversight on AI. These are code words for a centralized AI-monitored global financial system. The strange part? They're using the threat of AI to justify the control of AI. Why it matters. All this talk of control has been contagious among the powers that be lately. It signifies the new era we now find ourselves living in, at a time when control and oversight of every little thing is deemed absolutely necessary for the ongoing safety and well-being of everyone. We all know where that leads, right down the road to Revelation 13:17, where no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark. Number 3. Deadly Hantavirus outbreak triggers multi-nation emergency quarantines. Over the last 6 days, the WHO and CDC have scrambled a massive international response following a lethal outbreak of the Andes strain of Hantavirus aboard the polar cruise ship MV Hondius. As of this week, 11 cases have been identified across 23 countries, resulting in 3 deaths, a terrifying 27% mortality rate. The ship was evacuated in the Canary Islands this week, with passengers instantly scattered into strict biocontainment isolation zones worldwide, including American passengers currently quarantined by the CDC in specialized Nebraska facilities. Why it matters? The Andes virus is uniquely dangerous because it is the only hantavirus that spreads person to person. The swift activation of global track and trace systems, forced quarantines, and level 3 emergency protocols shows how rapidly the global governance system can lock down travel. We're seeing the pestilences of the end times meet the ready-made global surveillance state. Number 2. Canadian assisted suicide program crossing more moral boundaries. One of the most disturbing cultural stories emerging out of the West right now is unfolding in Canada, where the country's medical assistance in dying program continues to push into controversial territory. This week, it drew renewed attention over discussions about possible expansion of assisted death policies for children and severely ill infants. A physician in Quebec publicly argued that parents of babies born with severe deformities or syndromes should have the option of requesting assisted death for newborns under certain circumstances. At the same time, federal discussions surrounding so-called mature minors continue raising questions about whether children could eventually qualify for assisted suicide, even without parental approval, if physicians determine the child is capable of consent. As if that wasn't enough, official reviews inside Ontario have also acknowledged cases where people seeking assisted death cited things like poverty, isolation, homelessness, and feelings of being a burden as contributing factors in their decisions. Why it matters? Once a culture begins redefining the value of human life based on suffering, usefulness, autonomy, or economic burden, moral lines become relative rather than fixed, and love grows cold. And now for our final story of the week. Number 1. The apocalyptic cry for control. As the world becomes more unstable, the powers that be become more adamant, more fixated on centralized control and monitoring. Governments want stability, corporations want security, citizens want protection from fraud, cybercrime, misinformation, and AI abuse. And increasingly, people are growing more willing to surrender privacy, independence, and freedom in exchange for security and order. Headlines from around the globe tell the story. This week, the United Nations continued advancing its global dialogue on AI governance and expanding international coordination supporting artificial intelligence oversight and regulatory frameworks. Reports from Europe tell of accelerated rollout plans for its EU digital identity wallet system, infrastructure designed to centralize identity verification, authentication, signatures, and access to digital services across member nations. The European Commission also urged rapid deployment of a new age verification system capable of integrating directly into those digital identity frameworks. In the midst of these stories, the IMF dropped a bombshell report in which the organization's chief warned that the global financial system is fundamentally not ready for the cybersecurity threats posed by AI. The report specifically warns that a single vulnerability in a cloud provider could ripple across the entire world instantly, causing a global funding strain. By admitting how fragile the current financial system is, they prepare the world to accept a different system, the coming new digital financial architecture, which is nothing more than a central bank digital currency. CBDC is easy to secure, but it's also programmable and easy to control. The Word of God tells us the last days will be chaotic times. But friends, in light of what's coming, the chaos has barely begun, and already the world is crying out for a central command and control system. Imagine how much more pliable people will be when the Antichrist emerges to take his throne behind the global control panel.
Every day, it's something else.
The world wants a guarantee that it's never going to get, but we're not worried about all that. While the world is unraveling at the seams, we believers are standing firm on the rock. And though the winds of Bedlam might try to overcome us, we shall not be moved. That's it for this week's edition of the Top 10 in Prophecy. Join us again next week for another update. Until then, stay in the Word and keep your eyes on Jesus. Watchwoman signing out.
Thanks for watching. Please leave your thoughts about this week's stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click the bell for notifications.